Welcome to Salute Your Sports. Can you believe it, guys? It's been 1 year since we started doing the online podcast. I'm Kamen Enchev with Tom Castleman, Drew Brackett. Guys, I've loved talking sports the past year. Of course, we did this college sports radio show together from 2011 to 2013. Last year in 2020, we got the idea to reunite this as a podcast. We've done it for a year now. It's been a really good year, and we'll do plenty more sports talk today.
Absolutely. We'll be going a little bit down memory lane toward the end of the show, but we're going to be focusing most of our attention on a lot of different things. Of course, it's football season, so NFL's big. We have a huge college football matchup as well. And of course, the playoffs are starting right now. Wild card games going on in the American League, followed up with National League tomorrow. And then we are on to the divisional series, so lots to talk about.
Yeah, we'll start with the NFL. And of course, we had the Cardinals beating the previously undefeated Rams on Sunday. Guys, comment, are the Cardinals the team to beat out of the NFC?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the NFC is so wide open right now. I think you've got 4 or 5 teams who are pretty evenly matched. The Cardinals, the Rams, the Cowboys even. Your Cowboys are really good this year. Of course, there's the Buccaneers, the defending champs. The Packers look back to normal. To me, they're not the team to beat out of the NFC. I know it was a huge win over the Rams, but I think for the Rams, it was hard after having beaten the Bucks, to play another great team back-to-back weeks. The Rams had beaten the Cardinals 8 times in a row. At some point, you're due to beat your opponent. I trust the Rams defense, which has struggled so far this season. I trust them a lot more than I do the Cardinals defense. And then I look at the Bucks. The Bucks also got a better defense than the Cardinals. I think the Bucks are probably the team to beat. They're more explosive than the Rams, I think, and they're better defensively than the Cardinals. It's really, really close. But to me, I think the Cardinals' step this season is to make the playoffs, which I think they will make the playoffs. I don't think they'll slide too much, but that's their progression. Make the playoffs this season, then in 2 years, maybe we can talk about the Super Bowl, because we saw the Bucks win the Super Bowl. They've got their whole team back. And then obviously the Rams, some of those guys are gone, but some of them are still there. This is a team that was in the Super Bowl with Jared Goff a couple years ago. So I think when it comes down to the playoffs, I think that to me, the Cardinals aren't as proven as teams like the Bucks and Rams, who I label as the 1-2 teams out of the NFC, but it's really close. Any given Sunday, as they say in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that instead of being the team to beat, I think the Cardinals more join the tier of teams to beat in terms of, as you mentioned, the Buccaneers and the Rams were the 2 heavy odds-on favorites at the beginning of the season, just from a betting perspective to get to the Super Bowl, but also just from an analytical perspective, from a pundit perspective. Most people were going Tampa Bay or going with the LA Rams, but the Cardinals, with this pretty sizable win, 37-20, over the LA Rams, established themselves as being, one of the top tier teams in the NFC now. Kind of coming into the year, we thought it might be the Rams and the Seahawks as the top 2 teams out of the NFC West. So I think that what the Cardinals have done so far is put themselves up there in the top, 3, 4, 5 teams in terms of, you've got Tampa, you've got the Rams, you've got, I'd say, Dallas, Green Bay, and then the Cardinals are right up in there and kind of like a big 5 right at the top. The rest of the NFC, it seems like there's a pretty clear-cut difference between them now. If you want to put the Panthers up there, with Christian McCaffrey injured, their defense has been really, really good, though. So I would say, Cardinals are solidly in the top 5 at this point. Certainly a step up from where we had them at the beginning of the season. At least I did. I didn't have them in the playoffs. I can't remember. Maybe Drew had them as a wild card team, something along those lines. Maybe it was you, Common, but they're certainly, on the doorstep making some noise right now.
Oh, watch out for the boys. Watch out for the boys. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, my question for you guys real quickly, and before we get into maybe some AFC talk. Do we think that right now the NFC is perhaps a little bit stronger than the AFC right now as a conference? I think, to me, that's probably fair to say. But then again, I don't know. There's a lot of good teams out west and out north in the AFC. But I think given how much the AFC South has struggled, how much the AFC East has struggled, I think right now the NFC we're talking about team to beat out of the NFC, but I mean, I don't know. Is the NFC team the one that's going to be the favorite to win the Super Bowl when that happens? I mean, obviously, I think the Chiefs are going to get it together, but right now the NFC looks to me like a stronger conference than the AFC.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a stronger conference, if only because you mentioned, the two weakest divisions are AFC East and AFC South. If you look in the NFC, I mean, the Cowboys are really, really strong atop their division. Washington has had its ups and downs, but is, I'd say a decent enough team. And then the rest of the divisions have, some pretty solid talent around, including or especially the NFC West, with no teams below 500 on that division. So I would say, like, AFC West, NFC West are looking really strong, but as far as depth goes, I think NFC is a bit better of a conference than AFC this year.
Yeah, and one last thing for the Cardinals before we move to the AFC, for me, it's like they got to prove it to me, because the Titans we've seen are much worse than we thought they would be. They're 2-2. That's who they beat. They beat the Jaguars, and they beat who else did they beat the other game? They beat someone else really bad. I have it pulled up. They beat
Seattle
Vikings.
and Indianapolis.
No, that they beat the Vikings. The Cardinals did.
Oh, the Cardinals. I thought you were talking about the Titans. Right. Yeah.
But my point is the Cardinals have the big win against the Rams. I want to see them get a second big win before I'm 100% sold on them. But yeah, it's wide open. I think the beauty of the NFL is the parity. Through 4 weeks, we have one undefeated team, the Cardinals, and we have only two teams that have lost every game, the Jaguars and Lions. And they've both been really, really close. I think in a few weeks, we'll probably have no undefeated teams and no teams with no losses. That's how much parity there is in the NFL right now.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll move to the AFC, guys. The Bills are 3-1. They play the Chiefs. How big is this game coming up?
Yeah, this is a huge game. I think this game is sort of a statement game. I know people say it's just any given game, but I think this is, to me, probably the winner of this game is the favorite in the AFC. I know Baltimore and Cleveland have looked good, but Baltimore's got a lot of injuries. And Cleveland, their offense isn't quite there right now. I know Kansas City's 2-2, but they could be 4-0. Their defense has been as bad as they're going to be. They've had a few turnovers on offense. They're 2 plays away from being 4-0. To me, this is a rematch of the AFC Championship. This is probably the two best young quarterbacks in the NFL, if not the two best quarterbacks, period. The two guys with the two strongest arms in the NFL. This is going to be the Sunday Night Football game. This game goes a long way towards determining who the favorite is out in the AFC. I know the Bills are 3-1, but the teams they've beaten have combined for 2 wins or 3 wins. I think they lost to the Steelers, who have 1 win. They beat the Dolphins, Texans, and Washington, I think, who all only have 1 win. So they're 3-1, but the teams they've played have combined for 4 wins. One of them coming against them. So they've got the best point differential. But Buffalo's got to prove it to me. I know Kansas City has 2 losses, but those came against the Chargers and the Ravens, 2 really, really good teams. And I think Baltimore is kind of the same deal as the Cardinals. They've lost so many times in a row to the Chiefs. They were due at some point. So I think this is going to be a close game, an evenly matched game, but I like Kansas City. I know their defense isn't as good as it was last year. I know the Bills' defense is better than it was last year. So this is where that 14-point win and 9-point win is going to come down to a 1-possession ball game. But for me, I think the Chiefs wake up in this game. They already woke up last week. Mahomes had 5 touchdown passes. They got the run game going. They put up 42 points. They didn't get as many turnovers as they've gotten in the last few weeks. And quite frankly, a couple of their turnovers were bad luck. They had a tip ball against the Chargers. Clyde Edwards-Helaire fumbled. Like, he's not going to do that all the time. So I think it's a tough matchup for the Bills. The Chiefs are at home. The Chiefs clearly have their number. They put up a 38 spot on them last year in the AFC title game. So it's a huge game. It's one of the games of the year. But it's going to be a high-scoring game. We'll have more on that on Locks of the Week. But I like the Chiefs in this one. I really do. I think Kansas City got their losses out at the right time this season as opposed to last season.
Yeah, I think I like Kansas City a little bit at home as well in the primetime matchup. The thing that's concerning is, exactly like you mentioned, Calvin, is the defense. They've given up 29, 36, 30, and 30 points. And, like you said, Cleveland not really getting their offense going all that much this season, scored 29 against Kansas City, which, good enough to win most weeks. They just played like 3.5 quarters of football and kind of fell away in like that last percentage of the game. And then, it's going up against a Ravens team that can put up some points, going up against a Chargers team that can put up some points, and an Eagles team that can put up some points. The Bills are no different. In fact, the Bills are probably the best offense that the Chiefs are going to go up against all season long. So the thing that I'm actually looking at most is similar to you. It's going to be an exciting game. It's going to be up and down the field. There's going to be points on the board because as improved as Buffalo's defense is, they've put up a couple of shutouts against teams that aren't particularly that strong. So I think that it'll definitely be a fun game to watch. Like I said, I prefer Kansas City slightly at home, but of course, a Buffalo win on the road would not surprise me in the slightest at this point. As far as the best team in the AFC coming out of this game, I mean, if Buffalo wins 4-1, they're certainly up there. If you have Kansas City and Buffalo both at 3-2, they're kind of sort of in the pack. I mean, they have the luxury of having two of the best quarterbacks in the game, which at any point in time really is what makes you the favorite, regardless of what your record is. I don't think, I don't really think of it as a statement game simply because, we're pretty confident that both teams are going to be in the playoffs regardless. And as long as these teams are in the playoffs, again, with the quarterbacks that they have, home and road doesn't really matter as much. Seeding doesn't really matter as much. They're going to be just as dangerous to beat any time or any team, anytime, anywhere.
Yeah, I think it's bigger for the Bills, though. I think getting the home field
Sure.
for them would be big. Drew, what do you think about this game? And also, I got so fired up to talk about this game that I actually skipped the rundown. So I'll let you get back, get the big talking point in the sports world in America. I think was ahead of this Chiefs game in the rundown. But before you do that, what do you think of this Chiefs-Bills game? Who do you like? I should say this. You haven't been on the show the last few weeks, but you've been killing it on Locks of the Week. You're sort of our NFL guru here on this show. I know this last week you didn't do quite as good, but I think 2 weeks ago you went 5-0, maybe 4-1 the week before that. I mean, guys, listen to Drew Brackett. He knows what's up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you got to be aware of the Chiefs' defense, just not that great. So you got to like the Bills in this situation, +3 for sure. But I think it will be a fun game to watch. And you do give that over a look, of course. But yeah, Common, you go back to last Sunday night's game. What did you think of Brady's return to Foxborough?
Yeah, that was quite a hyped up game, as Tom Castleman called it on our show. Perhaps the most hyped up regular season game in NFL history. Not given so much the opponents, although it ended up being closer than any of us thought, quite frankly. But given the situation, Tom Brady returning to New England to take on Bill Belichick, he set the passing yards record in the game. It was really cool. I think Brady got a great ovation before the game, well-deserved. I did think they probably should have stopped the game to commemorate his passing yards record. Actually, the Bucs had to call timeout. They did put it on the Jumbotron, which was interesting. I did think it was cool that Belichick and Brady did meet after the game, apparently for 20 minutes. I think Belichick finally given Brady the respect he deserves. I think Belichick perhaps hasn't been as much of a sort of a man as he should be because he sort of like the exit interview was a phone call. He didn't talk to a man-to-man. I think it was good for them to finally do that. I did say this on the Showtime. I said that the Patriots had the number 2 pass defense in the NFL. The Bucs without Gronk, without I think Scotty Miller. So I think it shouldn't have been that surprising that they didn't score that much. I did think it's going to go under. I think the total was like 49. I was thinking more of like 27-13, 24-13. And that could have easily been the case, but the Bucs ended up settling for field goals instead of touchdowns. And actually, the Patriots almost won the game. They had a field goal doink off the upright at the end of the game. So I think it was a good game, that it was close. And it showed that Belichick knows Brady, and it showed that what Belichick's defense can do against any offense. They can shut you down. They can shut your passing game down. But ultimately, the Pats don't score enough. They don't have enough targets, and that's why the Bucs won. But I think it was It didn't quite live up to the hype, but I think it was still a really cool game to see Brady in New England, to see that whole atmosphere, and it's just things that you dream of as a sports fan.
I actually think that as far as the on-field game goes, it lived exactly up to the hype because you saw
It was close.
it was a close game and it was also like a greed kind of game. If you look at all the kind of like historical or like the watershed moments of Tom Brady's time in New England and his time with Bill Belichick, how many games came down to Adam Vinatieri kicking it for three type of thing, and it was Tom Brady who put the team on there for that last drive. That was pretty much how this game kind of went all the way down to the wire. And I thought it was really intriguing to see because part of the hype coming in was, Brady and Belichick have worked together for 20 years. I mean, that's mind boggling, to us 30 somethings that people could work together in that kind of collaboration in a professional environment for that long. And to come into the game knowing that Bill Belichick was going to throw everything in the kitchen sink at Tom Brady, and then actually watching that play out where Tom Brady's never getting more than like one or two looks in a row of the same type of defense, even going as far as I think it was called like a dollar defense with like 7 defensive backs on the field. Like New England pulled out all the stops and kept it close to the end of the game. So I thought it was a really, really fun game to watch. I was riveted from start to finish pretty much, even though it wasn't super high scoring. I think it would have been a lot less gratifying if it had been, Tampa Bay 35, New England 17 or something like that. I don't think it would have been as fun to have watched that game, and I would have definitely ducked out earlier regardless of the overarching storylines. But I thought it was a great, great game overall from start to finish.
It was a game that Tom and Drew liked, these low-scoring guys.
Yeah.
Drew, you like the low-scoring game?
Of course, you gotta love those low-scoring games, and it's rainy. Gotta like that.
Yes.
Oh, I hate it.
It was quintessential fall autumnal New England weather. It was great.
I'm a points guy, guys. I'm sorry. I just can't get behind a 1917 game in the modern day NFL. I was just, I was working during the game, but I had my eyes on it as well, and it just seemed like I thought that there could be a little bit more excitement. But I think Mac Jones held his own, by the way, 2 touchdown passes. Tom Brady had no touchdown passes. So how about that? So that was cool to see. I think New England is a couple offensive targets away from being a contender. But what I did think, the game was sort of symbolic of Tom Brady's career as a whole. And Tom, like Drew wasn't here the last 2 weeks, but I heaped a lot of praise on Tom Brady the last 2 weeks, and rightfully so. He's a great player. I've never said that he's not a great player. He is in the conversation for the greatest quarterback and greatest football player of all time. I've simply said that there's another 3 or 4 guys who are at his level. I think Mahomes is on another level, but he hasn't played the years. But I've just felt that Tom Brady, of any athlete, along with Cristiano Ronaldo too, by the way, but now he's been very lucky and fortunate. That was the type of game that Tom Brady has played all his career in New England. That's been the thing. Tom Brady has been average and won close games. That's happened so many times in New England, and it happened yet again, this time with the Tampa Bay Bucks. Do you guys think? Go ahead, Drew.
I was just gonna move on, but
I had
you
a
go
question
ahead
for
on
you,
the
actually.
NFL. Sure.
Yeah, I had a question for you. Like, are you a little bit concerned with the Bucks, given that they barely won this game, given that they lost by a lot against the Rams? I know the Cowboys now look better than we thought, but that was a close game too. Outside of the dreadful Falcons, they haven't looked dominant this season. Is there any cause for concern, or are you not like really worried about them, guys?
No, I'm not concerned.
No, that was the Sunday night game in New England, sold out. Fans were pumped for their team. That's a tough environment. You go out there and win by 2, you walk away happy.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm along those same lines. I think Tampa Bay also has a few injuries. Gronkowski, Scotty Miller, I mentioned. Their defense actually has looked better this game. I know against the bad team, but I think the Bucks are going to be they're going to be just fine. And I think I just was a little surprised not to see a Brady touchdown. I know, and they had a rushing touchdown. I would have thought that in the goal line they would do everything they can to get him a passing touchdown. That was the one thing that surprised me a little bit, that Tom Brady did not, in fact, get a passing touchdown in this game. But I think all things considered, all the Sunday night games I think have been close this year, except for maybe the Bears game. So another good Sunday night game to look forward to next week with the Chiefs and Bills. That one will certainly be much more higher scoring than 1917. More on that in Locks of the Week.
There you go. We'll move on to college, guys, and a game that could be low scoring. Number 3 Iowa hosting 4th ranked Penn State. Tommy, what do you think of the showdown?
Oh man, this is the Big Ten is turning out exactly like I told Tom Castleman it would. I told him this. I told him that Oregon was going to lose. They lost. I watched Oregon against Arizona. That was not a great Oregon team. I think that this is going to be a great game. It's probably going to be low scoring, like you mentioned. The winner of this game has a great shot at the playoff. The loser is going to have a hard way back to making the Big Ten title game, making the college football playoff. The Big Ten is interesting. I think there's a lot of really good teams in the Big Ten. I don't know that there's any great teams. I think both of these teams haven't really played a great schedule. I think Iowa State looks pretty bad. I think that Iowa win doesn't look as good as it did. Both of these teams beating Indiana, who's been really bad this season. I know the Auburn win was nice for Penn State, but it was an 8-point win at home, something you expect. So this is two of the worst 3rd and 4th ranked teams I've ever seen in college football history. Quite frankly, I don't think either of these teams are normally the 3rd or 4th best team in the country, but given how bad every team, or not bad, but average to good, mediocre, every team outside of Alabama and Georgia has looked, maybe they deserve it to be 3rd and 4th. I do like Penn State in this game. I know it's a road game. I know Iowa's favored by 2, but I think Penn State is the more explosive team. They're the more exciting team. They've got a better passing game. You look at the stats, they're both scoring about the same, both giving up about the same points. I think Iowa scored slightly more, but they've also played a slightly easier schedule. Their common opponent, Penn State, beat Indiana 24-0. Iowa beat them 34-6. But to me, I look at the passing games. 286 yards a game for Penn State, 194 for Iowa. And here's the man to keep your eyes on. Jahan Dotson for Penn State. He's Mel Kiper's number 8 overall player for next year's NFL draft. He has 446 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns after 4 games. He's going to be the difference in this game. He's going to make a couple big plays. Iowa's running game and defensive style is not going to work against a truly good team like Penn State. So I got Penn State winning on the road and giving themselves a shot to make the playoff. But ultimately, I think they're going to lose to Ohio State, and then Michigan State are up 5-0. They're going to beat each other. I told Tom this. No Big Ten team is going undefeated this year. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a defining game between these two teams because, as you said, Common, previous schedules up to this point haven't been as impressive as we thought just based on talent level, although how much you can really attribute to that being a certain team's fault, for example. I mean, Indiana came in ranked 17th. Iowa State came in ranked 9th. I mean, heck, Penn State and Wisconsin was 12th.
Yeah, you couldn't have known that.
Exactly.
That bad, so go ahead.
So I think in this case, it's pretty close to a pick'em game. Last I checked, I think that Iowa has a slight edge for being at home. So I think I'll just lean with the home favorites. Although if you were to put this on a neutral side, I bet it'd be a toss up. So it kind of comes down to style of play. If I was able to keep it at a slower pace, grind it out kind of game, I think they'll have a great deal of success against Penn State. And then Penn State, it's if they can get, if they can crack 1 or 2 big plays against Iowa, that'll be the difference in the game. Like you said, Dotson is the one of the top receivers, as far as an NFL prospect goes. He's going to be a player to watch. It's going to be interesting to see how Iowa maybe bracket coverages him or tries to find a way to phase him out of the game and make somebody else beat them. I think that's probably going to be a big key to the game. But I like Iowa ever so slightly at home.
Drew, looking forward to this game?
Yeah, it's going to be a great game. I think it's in the afternoon, so not a night game. in Iowa. So afternoon game. So definitely should be interesting. I'm excited to hear about what we have next. Tom, you're the group of 5 representative over there.
Sure,
And we're
he's a
talking,
Cincy.
of course, Cincy. Yeah, winning convincingly at Notre Dame. They're number 5 in the rankings ahead of Oklahoma. Common, what do you think? Cincy's chances to make the playoff, are they greater than 50%? And are you on board with the Bearcats?
I am transitioning and getting ready to hop on that Cincinnati bandwagon. I'm joining Tom Castleman and the Bearcats. There's plenty of room. Let's go. I was sold in that 24-13 win over Notre Dame. I was sold with Cincinnati's defense. I'm sold with what they're doing. I talked about this, how all the teams this year, we don't have any elite teams outside of Alabama and Georgia. And I think this is the perfect opportunity for Cincinnati to sneak into the playoff. I think they've got a really solid team. They've got a good defense, as I just said, holding the Irish to 13. They scored 38 a game. They allowed just over 14 a game. They're 266 pass yards, 146 rush yards. Desmond Ridder is a legitimate quarterback. And then they've got a great running back as well. So I think they've got a pretty solid duo there in Cincinnati, and they've got a really easy schedule. And, the same thing Tom said, like sometimes you don't know who you're going to play. Like they also beat Indiana, who's this team that, everyone realizes that they're not as good as they are, but maybe they're not as bad given that they've played the 3rd, 4th, 5th ranked teams in the country. So we'll see how Indiana does the rest of the season. But I think Cincinnati, their only really tough game is SMU, but they host that game at home. So I think if they go undefeated, which at this point I'm leaning that they will go undefeated, if they go undefeated, it's going to be very hard not to put them in the playoff. And I know I said this earlier, like sometimes you can go undefeated and not be deserving, but I actually would argue that they probably would be deserving. I think Oklahoma has been so underwhelming. They're beating these mediocre teams by 7 points week in, week out. At some point, they're going to lose playing this way. They might lose this week against Texas, quite frankly. So I just don't like Oklahoma's defense, and their offense hasn't been nearly as good as people thought they would be. And Spencer Rattler, I've said this, I said he's overrated. He's inconsistent. He's got a lot of talent, but he's not consistent. He's prone to turnovers. I actually honestly believe, and this is very rare coming from my mouth, because normally I'm the guy who says the big program team is going to beat the little guy. The little guy is there because they played an easy schedule. But I think Cincinnati right now would beat Oklahoma. I think Cincinnati right now would beat Ohio State, who struggled. I think they would beat Oregon right now. I honestly think Cincinnati might be the 3rd best team in the country. And, it's really close. Like 3rd through 10th are all about even. None of them are great. They're all okay. But even if they're not the 3rd best team, they'll have the resume by the end. They go undefeated. All those other inconsistent teams beat each other up. It's going to be tough to argue against an undefeated team that smashed Notre Dame.
Well, I got to say, nobody's going to be a bigger SMU fan than the Cincinnati Bearcats, because I think that they're actually still at less than a 50% chance to make it into the college football playoff. Even if they go undefeated, win their conference, yada, yada, I think the playoff committee is still going to say, hey, you beat a Notre Dame team that is decent, but needed overtime to beat Florida State.
First game of the season.
Sure, and I believe they had one other really close game where they needed a late touchdown to win against an unranked opponent, Toledo. Thank you. I knew it was Toledo or Tulane, one of the two. And then, you beat them 24-13. That's a pretty decent, solid win. But when you stack that resume up, when you consider that 2 spots are automatically already going to Georgia and to Alabama at this point. So really, it's not one of 4 teams. It's one of 2 teams making a playoff. I think that, the committee probably would still go with, say, a 1-loss Big Ten champion. They might go with a 1-loss Pac-12 champion over Cincinnati. I'm just saying they might. That they're going to go with
Pac-12, the Big
bigger
Ten, yes.
name. A bigger name school is going to make it in than Cincinnati. I would have no surprise at that if the committee decided to do that. So between now and when those two teams, Cincinnati and SMU, meet up late in the season, I think it's the second to last game of the season in late November. Cincinnati is going to be hoping for the Mustangs to be undefeated by that point as well, just kind of cruising through their schedule, just so that matchup is good enough that Cincinnati can have a better feather in their cap. Because I think just Notre Dame and either like a lower ranked SMU team or a just out the top 25 SMU team, I don't know if that's really going to cut it with the committee saying, hey, who did you play?
Drew, I'm guessing you're on Cincinnati. You want Cincinnati to make it? I mean, I don't know what you want, but like, I think they're. What do you think about Cincinnati? Do you like their team?
It's a great story for sure. I watched that Cincy Notre Dame game, a heck of a game, and yeah, it's a great story. I'd love to see a group of 5 team make the playoff.
Because they'd be the first one, right? In the actual playoff format.
Yes. It will be. I mean, I know when they change the rules, we'll have them, but under the current format, it would be the first one. I think it's coming because I think people have wanted a group of 5 team. And this is sort of the perfect year. If you're going to make an argument for them, it's like these other teams are not looking dominant right now. They really aren't. I think the Pac-12 looks abysmal as a conference, by the way. So I honestly think undefeated Cincinnati gets over the Pac-12. They get over the ACC champ, which also another conference that doesn't look really good. The only thing that scares me is the Big Ten and the Big 12. And I think one of those teams gets in. I mean, Cincinnati's looking at a 4. But if their hope is that these Big Ten teams beat up on each other, because I'm not convinced we're going to have a 1-loss team in the Big Ten, because I think the Big Ten is the deepest conference in college football. It has the most good teams. I think there's a real possibility, and that's what I'm banking on. I kind of agree with what you're saying, Tom. I think if there is a 1-loss Ohio State, 1-loss Penn State, etc., they may get the edge over Cincinnati. But I actually am banking on that Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, Iowa, all these teams with 0 or 1 losses, I'm banking on them getting 2 losses. I really am. I really think that the Big Ten is going to be a wild conference this season. It's going to be crazy, and that's going to open up the door for Cincinnati. Oklahoma, I don't know, man. I don't know. Oklahoma could honestly end up with 2 losses too. They could also be a Florida State. Like Florida State when they went undefeated, barely beating teams. But Oklahoma is a real cause for concern to me. So I just think there's so many teams that could potentially lose, and so many teams playing teams that they could lose to any given week. Cincinnati's going to be playing a lot of cupcake teams. But I think you talk about SMU being the team to watch. Indiana is definitely the team to watch. Because if Indiana starts winning some of these other Big Ten games, they finish around 500 in the Big Ten. I think that would also boost Cincinnati's resume, and obviously how Notre Dame does. If Notre Dame runs the table, has 1 loss, that also looks better for Cincinnati. So Cincinnati isn't only concerned about themselves. They're concerned about these teams that they played. How is that resume going to stack up at the end? It's going to be really close. I think they're going to be right at that 4 or 5 slot. And the sad thing is, though, they're going to get demolished against Alabama or Georgia. But so would Ohio State, so would Oklahoma, so would Oregon, so would whoever gets that 4 seed is just going to get obliterated. And we talked about this last week, but are you more jumping on my side that, the loser of the Alabama-Georgia SEC title game should still get the number 2 overall seed, assuming that game is close, regardless of whether we have an undefeated conference champion? Because I think for me, I know it probably doesn't matter whether you're 2 or 3, but I am going to be absolutely furious if, say, Georgia or Alabama loses a 3-point game against the other one in the SEC title game and they don't get the number 2 overall seed, because I think Georgia and Alabama are so far ahead of everyone else that I don't think anyone could even really play with them consistently. I really do.
Yeah, no, I think like we talked about last week, and then we can leave, Drew to have a little bit more fodder for the conversation. I'm going to stand by my position that they'll probably be a 3 seed just for optics.
I hate it. I hate it. That's awful.
The optics. Love the optics.
That's awful.
Yeah, you can't you can't
really
optically
doesn't
put it
matter.
right. That's what I'm saying.
I want the optics to be right, guys. I want justice with the college football playoff. Let there be justice.
I'll talk to you in December.
Okay.
Long season.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Long season that's going to see a lot of these teams that aren't great put up losses. That's what I think.
Or they'll keep winning, you know.
Bama
could lose. Georgia can lose.
Well, okay. Do you think we're going to see an undefeated Big Ten team? Do you really think that'll happen? Because
probably not. No, but you never know. Alabama could stumble one week.
Alabama's going to stumble
one week.
Georgia give up enough points to stumble? Are you kidding? Do you really think right now I would make a mortgage bet on Alabama and Georgia both going undefeated heading into the SEC championship game? I would be shocked if either one of them lost a game. Absolutely shocked. You really think Alabama or Georgia can actually lose a football game, given what you've seen, how dominant they've been? You really think so?
Yes, it's college football. Absolutely.
I don't think so. I really don't. I don't see it. Who are they going to lose to? I just don't see it.
On the road can be tough. Georgia, Florida's a big game always. Iron Bowl. You never know.
Garbage.
I think the Iron Bowl's at Auburn this year.
Doesn't matter.
It is.
Doesn't matter. Bo Nix will be inconsistent. Can Bo Nix play 4 quarters against Alabama? I doubt it.
That's in a few months. Who knows? Couple months.
I'm a little bit torn. Like I'm getting so impressed by Georgia that I'm Alabama roll tide all the time over here. And I don't love JT Daniels, but I think, and I'll have more on this in Statement of the Week, but just how great Georgia's defense is, I'm not convinced that Alabama is actually the best team in the country right now. It might be Georgia.
I'm jumping the gun on this, but who's the only team to score a touchdown against Georgia this year?
South Carolina. So UAB scored a touchdown against them, but it was a defensive touchdown. It was a pick 6.
Yeah.
So South Carolina is the only team to score an offensive touchdown against them in garbage time, mind you. But yes, and I'll have all sorts of stuff about Georgia's defense later in the show. I'll tease that. It's just mind blowing how good their defense is. And I, as a Mizzou Tiger fan, man, that Mizzou Georgia game is going to be ugly. How disappointing was Mizzou against Tennessee? They gave up 45 points in the first half. Eli Drinkwitz said that there is no depth chart. He didn't release a depth chart because how bad everyone is. All of the spots are up for grabs. And did you see one of the guys? I don't even remember who it was, but he wasn't even going for the tackle. Tennessee's just walking into the end zone, and this guy's just walking. He's disappointing game for Mizzou.
I did not see that particular play. No.
Yeah, look it up. It's just pathetic. I was so disappointed in Mizzou. I don't think they're making a bowl game this year. I was thinking they would, but I don't think so. Good thing they scheduled North Texas for homecoming. They'll get the W this week on homecoming.
That's what really matters.
Sure.
Absolutely. Move on to baseball where, right now, Red Sox are up 3-0 on the Yankees. But what do you think, guys? Who makes it out of the American League to the World Series?
Yeah, I think the American League is so wide open right now. I think I look at all of these teams. I look at first off, the wild card winner to me, I think, is the worst team. They're in the wild card for a reason. I think the Red Sox, by the way, have been the most overachieving team in baseball. I just don't buy them. The Yankees, if they happen to win that, I think would have a small chance. But for me, I think you look at the Rays, White Sox, Astros. All 3 of those teams are pretty close to me. They really are. But we got to make a pick on the show. So I'm going to make a pick. I'm going to rule out the Rays just because I think it's very hard to make it to the World Series back-to-back years. That's just something you don't see very often. The White Sox have had a lot of injuries. I'm cheering for the White Sox as a Chicago guy, a Sox fan. But given how bad they've played against some of the elite competition, I just don't trust the White Sox. I really don't. I'm going to take the Astros, and this is the team that I don't want to win. So I hate having to make this pick. But they've got the most playoff experience, and these guys are so good that have shown that even without the cheating, they're still a really good team. They led baseball in runs, batting average, on base, hits. They're not as reliant on home runs as some of these other teams. And Altuve, Correa, like their lineup is great, and they've proven it before. And they also have really good starting pitchers. I know the bullpen matters more now, but in a short playoff series, your starting pitchers matter more than the regular season. And that's the theme I'm going with as far as my picks today for baseball. Lance McCullers and Framber Valdez, second and third best ERAs in the American League this year. Toronto's Robbie Ray had the best. He's not even in the playoffs. So you can make a case that they've got the top two pitchers in the American League, and they've got the best lineup in the American League. So as much as I hate to do it, I'm going with Houston. But I hope it's the White Sox. And I know they play each other, I think, the first series, Tom. So that to me, I actually think the winner of that series, I have a feeling, is going to make the World Series. I hope it's the White Sox, but I'm taking Houston.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the homer pick because why not?
Sure,
it was
why
the
not?
preseason homer pick. It's going to be going into the playoffs, the homer pick. The White Sox did struggle outside of their division, but they also were missing their center fielder for much of the season. They were missing their left fielder for most of the season with Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez. I mean, they have as balanced a lineup as Houston does. I think that they come up a little bit short in terms of, a couple lineup spots. I think right field's a little bit of a weakness. But if you look, everywhere else on the diamond, I would say right field and second base are the two places where you're a little bit weaker.
And they have good starters too, and great.
They have very good starters, and like you said, the bullpen is going to be pretty crucial. I mean, anytime if Liam Hendricks and Craig Kimbrell are both on, White Sox are not playing a 9-inning game; they're playing a 7-inning game at that point. Absolutely. And you can mix and match with Michael Kopech, Garrett Crochet, Aaron Bummer, Ryan Tepera. You can mix and match throughout the playoff series. And your starters in the playoffs really just have to be good enough for 5 innings. Just get through the lineup, 2 times, and then you just turn it over to the bullpen and just take your chances with them. The White Sox, I think, have the best bullpen talent-wise going into the playoffs. So I'm going to stick with the homer team, and I'm looking forward to a 3:07 first pitch. Going to have Len Casper and, I'm blanking.
Steve Stone?
No, Steve Stone, Jason Benet do television. Darren Jackson on the radio call.
That's right.
I'm going to probably be out on the back deck with a bag full of peanuts, just popping those open and enjoying some baseball on the radio.
Is this Thursday night is the first game or Friday?
Thursday afternoon, 3:07.
Thursday afternoon, right.
And then Friday they play at 1:07 because, despite being the third largest market in America, the White Sox aren't really the team in the third largest market in America. So we'll deal with our little sibling status where we can get it.
Yeah, well, they had the sibling status and they won the 2005 World Series. That worked.
They
out
did, and
well.
ESPN. I don't think ESPN is yet to acknowledge that.
No, they haven't.
They
haven't. They put up those graphics, Chicago championships, and they just forget about the White Sox. That's funny. Hey, how about the Chicago Sky in the WNBA? They're a couple wins away from, or maybe a win away from making the WNBA Finals. There's a fun fact for you.
I've not been following that as closely as I ought to, but that does not surprise me with Candace Parker on the proverbial homecoming.
We might talk about that next week because Sophie Cunningham, Mizzou alum, with Diana Taurasi and Brittany Griner, also went away from the WNBA Finals as a side note. But Drew, who do you like to make it out of the American League to make the World Series?
Gotta love the White Sox in this position. Gotta go with the homer pick. So
the homer pick. You're not
Sox.
A White Sox fan.
Might as well take the Sox.
He's an adopted son.
He's an adopted son.
Absolutely.
Okay.
What do you think in NL, Common?
Oh man, I spent a lot of time thinking back and forth what I'm going to do with my National League prediction because I'm like so extremely torn. Because in the American League, I'm torn too, but I have a feeling about the Astros, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's the White Sox. But in the National League, first off, I would like to say that the Dodgers, if healthy, are hands down the best team in baseball. No questions asked. They're the defending champs. They had 106 wins second most, one less than the Giants. They had the best run differential, LA did, and they had so many injuries this season. Kershaw got hurt, Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger, Corey Seager, Trevor Bauer had his issues off the field. Like, so many injuries for the Dodgers. Then you had the Giants, who had the best record in baseball. Great pitching staff for the Giants. They added Chris Bryant, a bat they needed. And then you've got, obviously, the Cardinals, who are really, really hot, and they play the Dodgers in the wild card game. So I'm like hesitant to pick the Dodgers because the wild card game is tomorrow. So I can go and talk about the Dodgers having the most talent, and they lose in the wild card game, 1-game playoff with Scherzer and Wainwright. But to me, it's going to go down to two teams. Ultimately, I think the Dodgers are going to beat the Cardinals, and I'm sticking with the theme of pitchers. I love the 1-2 duo that the Brewers have. Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns. 2.43 ERA for Corbin Burns, 2.56 for Woodruff. And then the Dodgers have Scherzer and Buehler, 2.46 and 2.47. You have arguably the top 4 pitchers in the National League split out amongst those two teams, if not the top 4 in all of baseball. So I think it's going to go down to the Dodgers and Brewers. I think the Dodgers are a better team, but it's the year of the upsets. We saw the Buccaneers get the upset over the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, Baylor in college basketball. We had Chelsea in the Champions League. Just so many upsets this season. I mean, we just had the Jets beat the Titans this last week in the NFL. So I think it's just hard to win back-to-back. It's something you don't see very often. And I think there's something going on in Milwaukee. I know we talk about like what's in the water in Tampa Bay with the Tom Brady water and all the luck he brought them, the Rays, the Lightning. But Milwaukee won the NBA championship with the Bucks. I think it's time for the Brewers behind Burns and Woodruff. And you talk about bullpens, the Brewers have a great bullpen too. And Josh Hader, he's a horrific person off the field. If you've ever read any of his tweets, like, he's a disgusting human being. I know that was earlier in his career. I truly hope he's matured. But then again, like someone who has the beliefs he's had, I don't know how much he's matured. But on the mound, Josh Hader is one of the all-time great relief pitchers. He is absolutely filthy. A lefty who can throw 100 miles per hour. He's got off-speed pitches. He locates the strike zone. So I think the Brewers pitching is going to carry him in the playoffs. Give me the Brewers to make the World Series and to win the World Series. The front runner, Kamenechev, going with an upset here.
The front runner?
Well, I picked the favorites. You know, that's what I do. I pick the favorites. I'm going with an upset this time.
Okay, that's fair. I liked the Brewers a lot better before Devin Williams was a numbskull and punched a wall after he had too much champagne celebrating a win, and he's now going to have surgery on his hands. You know, you do Bull Durham. If you're going to hit something, use the hand that you don't use to pitch. It's first off, like I'll keep this short about the no justice that even if the Dodgers win the wild card game, they go out and they beat the Cardinals. They're matched up immediately with the San Francisco Giants, which I think is a matchup that should absolutely be for the National League pennant. I think it's a travesty that those two teams are facing off. Only one of them has a shot to go, as opposed to the other game, the other series, which is the Braves of 88 wins and the Brewers of the National League Central duking it out for a shot. It almost doesn't seem fair. To me, I'm going to go with the Giants simply because I also like a little bit. They're not really an underdog. I mean, they're the best bloody record in baseball, but it seems like most people are talking about, you know, the Dodgers being the team to come out of this. I'm going to go with the Giants to go ahead and win the National League pennant, in part because they're a different sort of team model. This is a little bit more fan-based than analytics-based or any sort of logic. They're a team that has gone forward with veteran players, keeping Buster Posey on board, going out and getting Evan Longoria, going out and getting Chris Bryant. They're a team that's saying, we can win with, big money, big name ball players still who might be a little bit past their prime, but the talent that they have, the raw natural ability, is still there, and that matters. They also, coincidentally enough, have a really, really good bullpen, one of the best in the National League. I would actually probably give them an edge in bullpen pitching over the Milwaukee Brewers now that Devin Williams isn't going to be pitching. So give me the Giants to win the National League. And if we're announcing World Series winners, you already know where I'm going with this one. Homer pick all the way.
White Sox.
Yeah, I'll take the Giants out of the NL, and I'll take the Giants to win the World Series.
Wow. How about
It's
that?
an odd number year, though, Drew. Does that affect your rationale at all?
No.
Yeah, the Giants are known to win their even odd years. By the way, one thing to think about is maybe one more rationale as to why the Brewers might win. I think they're going to have a relatively easy series against the Braves. You look at the Dodgers and Giants are going to beat each other up. So the Brewers can really set their rotation, get their bullpen arms, get their rest. So I think they can prepare more easily for the next round. Milwaukee also has been a very good road team this season. And one thing to keep in mind as far as the Giants-Dodgers, if they do in fact play each other, Brandon Belt is hurt for the Giants. He's their first baseman. Mm-hmm. They think he probably isn't going to be back until the NLCS. So if there's like a sort of tiebreaker vote, that may be it for the Dodgers to beat the Giants. But the big news: Clayton Kershaw probably not going to be in the postseason this season either. So that if he was healthy, I would have definitely picked the Dodgers.
Right?
But,
yeah.
Julio Urias, though, I think had the most wins in baseball somehow. So he's not bad. And Scherzer obviously is really good. Walker Buehler is really good. I just have this feeling that just like even though the Dodgers had a great record, they lost a lot of close games this season. And something just seemed off with them for me. I know they got off to that hot start and they finished strong, but I don't know. It's hard to say. It's between the Dodgers and Brewers. I have a feeling the National League team's going to win. I'm cheering for the White Sox. I guess I'll go with the Brewers. So we'll see. It'll be fun. It'll be competitive. I think I've said this, I keep repeating it, but it's wide open across all the sports right now. There is no true favorites. There's no true upsets. I think it's going to be great to watch all of these games because it's truly anything can happen. And obviously baseball, like hockey, really anything could truly happen, like soccer too. It's like a little bit more unpredictable than the NBA even. So
it'll be fun though. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. And we'll keep you updated as the playoffs progress. We'll see how much we change our picks because that'll probably end up happening for sure.
Absolutely. Locks of the week. What do you got? Let's hear the recap.
Yeah, locks of the week. Let's take a look. Let's take a look-see here. Wow, what a bad week for me. I had this thing where locks of the week where I have a winning week, a losing week, a winning week, a losing week. Well, this was my losing week, and I did lose. 1-4 this week. Bengals minus 7.5 over the Jaguars. Bengals only winning by 3. Browns minus 2 at the Vikings. Browns winning by 7. Got that one right. I had the Titans minus 7.5 at the Jets. The Jets winning 27-24. Bucks minus 7 at Pats. Bucks only winning by 2. And I had 49ers over the Seahawks minus 3. Seattle winning 28-21. Drew bracket after I think the 4-1 and a 5-0 week. 2-3. Down a little bit this week, but you did absolutely obliterate your English Premier League under. Burnley and Norwich City under 2.5 goals. As you would say, ain't nobody scoring. 0-0 game there. You had the Falcons plus 1.5 over Washington. Washington rallying for that 34-30 win. J.D. McKissick, the Arkansas State alum, the guy who I used to interview every week back in 2014, 2015 with the great touchdown there. You did have the Bears minus 3 over the Lions. Got that one right, 24-14. It's amazing what happens in Chicago when Matt Nagy doesn't call the plays. And then Panthers plus 5 versus the Cowboys. The boys winning by 8. And quite frankly, that was by more than that. Garbage time touchdown there. Then you had Broncos minus 1 over the Ravens. Ravens winning 23-7. Tom also 2-3. He missed the Seahawks 49ers over 52 points. We had 49. He also had the Bucks -7 against the Pats, like me. He did get the Cowboys covering against the Panthers, Washington beating Atlanta, and he missed his baseball Dodgers over 4 runs versus Yu Darvish. They won 2-1. So what do you have? We'll go to Drew Brackett first. We haven't heard you talk in person for Locks of the Week in a while. You are leading the standings, doing really, really well in season 2. Let me pull up your record, actually. Your record right now, Drew Brackett, is 12-7-1. So pretty good. What do you have for us this week?
Who's in second?
Right now, Tom is in second, and I'm in the basement right now. But I'll come back.
What are the records? What are all the records?
So Tom is 8-10-2, and I am 7-13. So Tom and I were co-champions year 1, about 500. We're both under 500 right now. Drew Brackett under 500 in year 1, now is well over. So the tide is sort of turning, but it'll be pretty wide open. We have a lot of picks with these 5 games a week. Things can change in a hurry.
Yeah, I'll first go to EPL. Everton versus West Ham United, under 2.5. That game Sunday. NFL Bengals +3 over the Packers. Steelers -1 over the Broncos. Panthers -4 over the Eagles. And finally, the Bills +3 over the Chiefs.
Love it. Tom, what do you got?
All right. So already I feel bad because I'm going up against Drew in one of these.
So am I.
Because I've got the Packers -3 over the Bengals. Give me the Patriots -9 over the Texans. As Drew likes to say, nobody's scoring in that game. I think that's definitely going to be the case for Houston, especially how New England's defense played this past Sunday. Give me the Chargers in a matchup of 3-1 teams, covering 1.5 over Cleveland. I'll go ahead and take the Titans -4 over the Jaguars. Hope that A.J. Brown or Julio Jones are coming back for that matchup, as the Titans usually play the Jaguars pretty well. And then I'm going to go for a team total. Give me the Buffalo Bills over 27.5 points. You can get that for -110. Bills have been over that number for all except, I think, one of their games. I think the opener against the Steelers. And I believe that the Chiefs have given up at least that many points in all of their games. So I think that's a pretty good combination for the Bills to go over 27.5. I'm not sure exactly how good their defense is because they've put up some shutouts. I don't know how much they can limit. So I'll take the team total as opposed to the game total just in case.
Yeah, I'm sticking with along those lines. I'm going to go with the game total. Chiefs Bills over 56.5 points. That is an insanely high over, but I feel good about it given that both of these teams, arguably the top 2 offenses in the NFL, they're currently tied for second in the league, both scoring 33.5 points per game. The 2 young quarterbacks who have probably the 2 best arms in the NFL. They have so much to prove. It's a major showdown. And I think you just mentioned the Chiefs defense has been horrible this season. In fact, 3 out of 4 Chiefs games have gone over 56.5 points this season. The other one just barely going under. And then the Bills defenses looked good, but they were not great last year. They also gave up 38 points to Kansas City last year. I know things have changed a little bit, but I think Kansas City matches up well against the Bills defense. I think the Bills offense matches up well against the Kansas City defense. I mean, it's 2 high-powered offenses, 2 great quarterbacks, 2 teams with really good targets on the outside. I think this is going to be a lot of points. This is screaming like a 35-34, 35-31. Like it's I think we might even go over 60 points. I think 56.5 over. I feel pretty good about it. I'm going to stick with that same game. I'm going to double up in this game. I'm going to pick the Chiefs -2.5. Is it -3 now? What is it, Drew? Let me check the updated lines because I had it at -2.5.
I had it at 3 earlier.
And what Tom and I have been doing is doing best odds we can find. So wherever we can find it,
it's
we're
minus
better.
3 on Bovada at even money.
Minus 3 on Bovada. Let's see what it is on DraftKings right now. It is, well, I still see it at minus 2.5. I don't know if you can see it. Minus 2.
I'll
I don't have
take
an
it.
account with DraftKings, so go ahead and take it.
Minus
Take it.
2.5. And I'll give you plus 3. You can have the best line we can both find. That's fair. We'll do it that way. So minus 2.5. Feel a little bit better with that half point. But I think Kansas City is a really good team. I think their defense has played as bad as they will. I think their offense is going to be really focused. Kansas City wakes up for these primetime games. They wake up for games like this. Patrick Mahomes coming off a 5-touchdown pass game. I know it was against the Eagles, but still, Clyde Edwards-Helaire put up over 100 yards, I think, on the ground. Finally got him going. I think Kansas City knows what this game is. I think they're going to win this game. They're at home at Arrowhead Stadium. 3 points isn't a lot in an NFL game. I mean, it's very rare you win by 1 or 2 points. So when I see like a 2.5, 3-point line, if I think you're going to win the game, chances are I'm going to bet on you. And of course, what's going to happen is the Chiefs will win by 1 and I'll lose. But either way, let's go Chiefs. I like the Chiefs winning that game. And then I'm going to go with something I rarely do. This is a Drew Bracket special. I'm going with an under. I rarely bet unders. I'm going Rams Seahawks under 54. That is a really, really high total in that game. 54 points is a lot. The last 4 times these teams have played, I know it's a new year, it's different teams, but the totals went under 54 the last 4 times they've played. The Rams defense has underachieved this year. Look for them to step up against a team they know very well, a division opponent. And Seattle's really weird. They're giving up a lot of yards, but they're playing bend but not break defense. They're not like allowing no points, but given the amount of yards they're giving up, they should be giving up a lot more points. Their defense has been solid as far as points. In fact, 3 out of 4 Seattle's games have gone under 54 this season. 2 out of 4 for the Rams have been under 54, but the 2 that went over were against the Bucs and Cardinals, who are both top 5 offenses in points. Seattle, pretty good offense, but not top 5. Not at that level of the Bucs and Cardinals. Don't have the same balance. So I think under 54, I feel pretty good about it. I don't think it's going to go way under, but I think, like a 27-24 Rams win, something like along those lines. I think under 54 feels pretty safe. Then I'm going to move to over. I'm going to go with South American World Cup qualifying Argentina and my boy Lionel Messi, the GOAT. I got over 2.5 goals in that Paraguay game in South American qualifying at plus 110 on DraftKings. So you can get really good odds there. Argentina's playing with a lot of confidence since they won the Copa America. Messi had 3 goals by himself in the last game. 2 straight games, Argentina scored 3 goals. Paraguay scored 2 in its last game also. I know South American qualifiers get ugly. I know there's a lot of physical play, a lot of low-scoring games, but I like there to be 3 goals in this one. Look for something like 2-1 Argentina, maybe 3-1, 3-0, but I feel good about over 2.5 goals. And I'm going to go with another under. I'm feeling the unders this week. Cardinals-Dodgers tomorrow, under 7.5 runs. Mizzou's Max Scherzer, 2.46 ERA this season. Adam Wainwright, the ageless wonder, at 3.05 ERA this season. And both of those guys have been in the playoffs. They've both had success in the playoffs. They're just really, really good pitchers. I think they're both going to pitch great in a big game. This is going to be one of those like 3-2 type games, maybe 4-3, but under 7.5. I feel pretty good about that total. So I love it.
Awesome.
Guys,
And
let
we
me ask
have
you this.
what's your trivia?
Yeah, sports trivia. Tom, do you have any sports trivia or did you not come up with anything?
I have not had time to research sports trivia of the day.
Drew, did you have sports trivia? I have sports trivia. Then we'll talk some some show moments, and then we'll do salutes and statements of the week, and we'll put Drew Brackett to bed because it's almost 10 o'clock over where he's at.
10 o'clock in the East.
Well past his bedtime. So we know about Joe DiMaggio's 55-game hitting streak in baseball,
56.
right? 56. Sorry, I was talking off the top of my head there. 56. However, as impressive as that is, I would argue that the on-base streak is more impressive. A certain baseball player had 84 games in a row reaching on base. Who is that baseball player?
It feels like it has to be an all-time great.
Yes, and
So-
it's not someone we were definitely not alive while he played.
So then it leads me heavily to think Babe Ruth.
Not Babe Ruth.
So my Ichiro pick is out.
Yeah,
Ted Williams?
Tom Castleman. This guy
Nice.
with this trivia, he's on fire. Tom Castleman, buddy, good job. How about that?
I just got to
84
remember the Sporkle test type of thing.
Yeah, 84 games, July 1st to September 27th of 1947. Ted Williams got on base 84
Oh, so this was
times.
after World War II.
Yes,
Ted Williams
he came
then.
back after fighting in
Wow.
the war, and he was still as good as ever. Ted Williams. How about that?
Wow,
Good
that's
stuff.
incredible. That's an incredible stat. On
That
base,
is-
84 games in a row.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's. I think it's more impressive than DiMaggio's record. I don't know. It's hard to say because obviously, like, they can walk you intentionally. There's a lot of other
Sure.
things that go into it, but I think getting on base is just as good as a hit. Like, I'm more impressed by Ted Williams. That's a record that I think is never going to be broken, given how much we rely on home runs now. Given that averages and on base are lower across baseball, I think both of those records are about equally untouchable, but I certainly think it's never going to happen. I mean, I guess the most untouchable record, well, I don't know. There's so many, but I think
Yeah, no, there's a lot in baseball.
I
You've
think-
got Cy Young's
in
511 career wins. Like,
Well, I
that's
think-
going to be untouchable.
I think football, Emmitt Smith's rushing record, with
Yeah.
how much we pass now and how much teams go to dual backs as well. I think Emmitt Smith's rushing record is pretty safe, unless Frank Gore comes out of retirement and plays for another 20 years, which wouldn't put him. I think he's a free agent technically. but still.
Technically, yeah. He hasn't hung it up yet. Like Wayne Gretzky's points totals, I think like those are like just because of the era in hockey in which he played, like that's going to be untouchable.
I heard something crazy about Wayne Gretzky. If you took away all his goals, he would still have the most points ever because of his assists.
Just assists, yeah.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Any other records you think of, Drew, that are very untouchable?
Not off the top of my head. Yeah, I think you guys did a good job of fitting them all.
Yeah. I think Cal
Probably Cal
Ripken's-
Ripken.
Cal
Yeah, I was
Ripken's
just saying.
streak- Yeah, Cal Ripken's streak will be hard to beat as well.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a cool record. I love records like that, and I just really, really enjoyed it. So, speaking of
What are your
enjoying-
favorite moments, Common?
Yeah, favorite moments of Salute Your Sports in our first year doing this online podcast together. Of course, we did this together in college. Drew and I for 3 years. Tom was a part of the show for 2 years. Reunited it 7 years later. 1 year of doing this. One of my favorite moments and favorite things in general on this show. First off, anytime that Tom Castleman has his weird word sayings, his grammar, any of that, I absolutely love. But I loved when Tom Castleman was fading his picks. Like early on in
I had
Locks
that.
of the Week, and it's almost one of the most remarkable things because Tom Castleman's not like a bettor. He doesn't like ever bet. Like he just bets for betting Locks of the Week on our show here. He doesn't go out there and
Correct.
bet like I do. He's just strictly an online like Salute Your Sports, let's bet for fun type thing. So sometimes they say you have beginner's luck, but Tom had the opposite of that. Tom hit like everything was wrong. Like every week he would be wrong, wrong, wrong. And a lot of times it was like really, really close, but he just kept like being wrong. So he got the idea that he was going to fade his picks, go the opposite of what he picked. And I think he went like 2-1.
I did.
And he did pretty good fading. And I will say, Tom, for you were something like 18 games under 500. You got back to
probably
500,
worse than that. It was really bad.
So he had an abysmal start. He got back to at least a respectable mark by the end of Locks of the Week. That was really fun for me. I think definitely the best prediction had to be Drew Brackett with the Bucks. He didn't have all the stats that I love, but he was adamant in the Bucks. Granted, he got very lucky given all the injuries the Nets had, but he said the Bucks preseason, he said the Bucks midseason, Bucks playoff preview, first round series, second round series, Eastern Conference Championship, NBA Championship. Drew Brackett is one of the few people in this country that had the Bucks all the way through that isn't even a Milwaukee Bucks fan. Like, I get it. Like, I mean, he is sort of an adopted Milwaukee Bucks fan, but I get it. Like, you're from Milwaukee, you'll blindly say the Bucks will win it. But Drew Brackett was all over the Bucks. Now, he did have him the last 2 years as well, but he did not give up in the Bucks. Prediction of the year definitely goes to Drew Brackett.
A blind squirrel finds a nut sometime. So
that's right.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen once in a while. Any
Absolutely.
other things you guys have really enjoyed the last year?
So I had myself, Costanzing myself, as Drew put it way back when. That was one of the big moments. Of course, when we had the Olympics coverage, and it was basically just like, we're just going to sit back, and we're just like going to come and go on and on about Bulgarian,
awful.
whatever.
I'm sorry.
And it was like you covered everything that we were missing on that, and just touching on things that weren't even in the rundown, quite frankly. You just kept hitting things for the Olympics. And then, of course, for Locks of the Week, saying, Bulgarian rhythmic gymnastics team, is that it? To medal. And then they go out and they win gold.
Yes.
That was one of the great things in terms of, everybody as Americans, as Native Americans, not lowercase and for Native.
I know what you mean.
It's easy for, Drew and I to be like, oh yeah, we're just going to cheer for, our people, so to speak. Common, you have the best of both worlds, where you are an American, but you're also from Bulgaria, and a country that doesn't send all that many athletes. So that moment and you having that as well was just really, really cool. And then for Drew, basically you just taking us around the world for I
had that
2 or 3 months, for your Locks of the Week, where we're going to Korean League B, and I don't even know what the names are. I'm going phonetically looking these up, just what sounds kind of sort of right, and oh, that must be it. I thought that was a really fun part of the show as well, just because we had no idea where on the globe you were going to spin that thing around and then point your finger for your Locks of the Week. Because no matter where you point your finger, you could probably find a soccer league and an over-under total.
Yeah, and I had that written down too. And Drew didn't even know. Obviously, even I didn't know any of the players, and I know a lot about soccer. We were talking about Korean Division II second league. I would have no idea who this guy is. He didn't know how to pronounce the team names, and that's what made it hard for me. I was going back, listening, writing down the Locks of the Week, trying to figure out what name Drew was saying, and then trying to figure out finding the score. And he actually did really well with that for a while, and eventually it caught up with him. But for a while, he was actually doing really good with those picks. Actually, the Euros is what did him in. He did really bad with the European Soccer Championship picks, but those random soccer places, he did mostly good. And he would miss all his other picks, but he would get those right. So that was certainly fun. Yeah, it's been a fun year. I've enjoyed it. I think we've had a lot of fun.
Drew, what were some of your favorite moments, if you have any?
Yeah, obviously, Tom, you fading your own picks, that's always a classic. And I love seeing Common's reactions to your, I don't know what he calls them.
His language.
Your vocabulary.
His vocabulary.
Your language.
His vernacular.
Yeah,
There you go.
And then, common sermons, that's always something we tune in for. What am I going to learn today? Educate me about baseball or, soccer. Just take 10, 15 minutes and hit all your points. So that's always fun.
I'll say this time real fast about the Olympics. Is the year of the upset. So my reasoning behind Bulgaria, they were they were projected like a sort of like tied for third, fourth. If you look at the betting odds, they were like the co-favorite for a bronze medal, but obviously there's a lot of countries, so they were still like plus money to medal. But it was actually, if you think about it historically, the fact that they medaled was not the least bit surprising, but the fact that they won a gold medal, if you look at the betting odds, Russia had won every rhythmic gymnastics gold medal ever in the Olympics. And they were like minus like 2,000 something. Like they were such a heavy favorite. For Bulgaria to beat them to get the gold, it was just like insane. And my cousin in Bulgaria, she's a diehard rhythmic gymnastics fan. She like just about lost her mind. And she gave me like, it's funny, like she's a Leo also like me. And like, she's also very passionate, but she's more about history. But the one sport she's into is rhythmic gymnastics. And she rattled off all these rhythmic gymnastics stats to me, kind of like how I rattle off stats to you guys.
Sure.
However, as much as I rattle off stats, I am aware that sports, especially this year, are not always played on paper. If they were, I'd be a millionaire now betting on sports. And I'm not, although I have definitely hit a hot streak. But nonetheless, though, I will say this. Sports are not played on paper, and she didn't get it. I was trying to explain it to her. I was like, great, you can list all these stats, but like there's no guarantee. And she's like, no, there's a guarantee. Russia is so far ahead. There's no way Russia will lose. And they did. And that was what was great. But yeah, it's been a great year. I'm looking forward to hopefully many more years of doing this together. And I'm thankful for, I know, obviously, just the technology and the ability to do this now. The pandemic has been really hard on many people, but I don't know that we would have had the chance to do this show during the pandemic. I know Drew is really busy right now with work at the moment. All three of us are finally working, so coordinating, getting this together is hard, but I'm glad we're doing it as much as we can, and I hope that we continue to do this for as much as we can, once a week or even every other week as life gets busier. But yeah, it's been fun, guys. It's been a fun year. We'll do year 2. It's going to be great. And let's start year 2, our first salutes and statements of the week before we say goodnight. What do you guys have?
Guess I'll go. I wasn't.
Hold on, real quickly. Drew, you're going to give a salute. You're going to have the same salute I have. So I'll let you give your salute. It's going to be the same one I have because I know you.
Can't think of anybody who passed away recently in the sports world, so not sure. But I'm going to go with some older news because I can't remember when this happened. But USA Ryder Cup team winning the Ryder Cup, that was huge in golf. That I did have a chance to watch that, and just such a fun time. The U.S. hadn't won in a few years, in a little bit, so. Finally getting a win in the team play between the U.S. and Europe was awesome to see, and it was complete and utter domination. So that was awesome watching you at Team USA.
Yeah,
that was certainly cool. Tom, maybe you'll have the salute I have.
I don't have any salutes. I have just a statement. I guess it could also kind of be a salute. I'm just so glad that the NBA has corrected its rules for what constitutes a foul, particularly in a shooting motion. A classic video, you may have seen it going around
Steph Curry.
Twitter. Steph Curry trying to do that move where he gets a defender in the air and jumps into him. No whistles blown. You hear the announcer say, not this year. And I can't tell you how excited I am for that. I'm all for a more aesthetic look to playing basketball when you have players going for those types of fouls that by rule are a foul, but you definitely know what the player's trying to do. They're definitely initiating contact as an offensive player. I am just so glad that the NBA is going to start correcting for that. I know everybody loves seeing points and points and points, but I think more importantly, people love seeing game flow. of the ball going up and down the court. People don't like points if it's going to be just free throws back and forth. And while I'm on a little bit of a rules kick, also glad that baseball is going to be changing its rules back to a more normal way of doing things. No more 7-inning double headers, and I'm blanking on what the other one was. But there's another.
Did they get rid of the 1-game wild card? Is that what it was? Or did
No,
I read that wrong?
No, it was the phantom runner on second base in extra innings.
Right.
They're getting rid of that as well. So for a league that has different rules depending on where you're going to be playing the game, and then different rules if you're going to be playing multiple games in one day, and different rules if you're playing more than regulation time than you do in regulation time, I'm glad baseball is getting back to a simpler way of playing a game and not gamifying it as much as they had the past couple of seasons. So all we have to do now is get rid of that pesky designated hitter, and baseball will be A-okay in my book.
Ooh, gosh, that's a discussion for another day. I got to ponder what I think about that statement, but I won't get in that tonight. Drew's got to go to bed. Hang
on a sec. I need to clarify. Get rid of the DH in one stadium versus another. I think it should be universal DH. I realize I may have said that a little bit weird. I think there should be a designated hitter in both leagues.
I lean towards agreeing with that. I actually thought you were trying to abolish it altogether.
No. I realized that my verbiage wasn't
your vernacular.
Yeah.
That's great. All right. Well, first off, I completely agree with both of those things, especially the NBA one.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that on SportsCenter, and I was like, absolutely. As much as I love Steph Curry, great rule. NBA, by the way, I just realized that opening night is like 2 weeks away.
Yeah, it's preseason right now.
Yeah, preseason has started, so we'll have to talk NBA. Maybe not next week, probably the following week. We'll do our NBA season preview. That really snuck up on me. But in the spirit of NBA, I've got to salute to Pau Gasol. Just announced his retirement from basketball. He most recently played actually for Barcelona basketball. I'm a big Barcelona fan, even though the soccer team is abysmal these days. But the basketball team is still very good. He's sort of been like, I think he deserves to make the Hall of Fame, given that everything he's done. And there's a Hall of Fame for international players. Yao Ming made the NBA Hall of Fame as an international player. Pau Gasol actually has been more successful than him, I think. 6-time All-Star, 2-time NBA champion, a double-double machine in his career. He was a great player in the NBA. He was a great player in Europe also. He was like European Player of the Year before he came to the NBA for Barcelona. He was also great in the Olympics, Eurobasket, like great international basketball player, great NBA player, great player in the European Basketball League, really good guy as well. And he's sort of been synonymous with winning. He's won everything at every level he can. So salute to Pau Gasol, also played for the Bulls. I do have a fun story about him. As I'm losing my voice here. Hold on a second. I was in Barcelona in 2016, and I started talking up some person on the street, of course, because that's what I do. We were talking in English, and I started talking to him about Barcelona soccer because I assumed that he was going to be a Barcelona soccer fan. Turns out this guy is an NBA basketball fan, and he started talking to me about Pau Gasol and how much he loves him because I told him I'm from Chicago. At the time Gasol was on the Bulls, he's like, oh, Pau Gasol, yeah! So the amount of passion for Pau Gasol by this fan in Barcelona kind of showed you his impact on basketball across the world. So salute to him. As for my statement of the week, I alluded to this earlier in the show. I'm going to go out and be bold. I'll make a statement because that's what we do here. I'm going to say the 2021 Georgia Bulldog defense is the best defense in the history of college football. They've gotten back-to-back conference shutouts. Vanderbilt, I know, is bad, but Arkansas was a high-powered offense, ranked 8th in the nation before that game, held them to 0. They've allowed 23 points in 5 games, but really, they've only allowed 16. Keep in mind, one was an offensive pick 6 against UAB. The D has given up 1 touchdown in 5 games in garbage time against South Carolina. They're allowing just 178.6 yards per game. The next closest team is Iowa State at 233.6. Are you kidding me? That's more than 50 yards less than the second closest team. They allowed 3 against Clemson. I know Clemson's much worse this season, but who holds Clemson? The 3 points. Unbelievable. And what's great about Georgia's defense, they do it by committee. They have 6 guys who have 15 tackles or more. They have 7 interceptions as a team. 6 are by different players. It's impossible to double team their linebackers, their defensive linemen. They've got 5-star recruits on the bench on their defense. That's how good they are. It's a crazy passing era. It's a crazy scoring era in college football too, like with stopping the clock on first downs. I mean, the game is designed to score points. And Georgia is holding conference opponents to shutouts in back-to-back weeks, holding Clemson to 3 points. Unbelievable. The greatest defense in the history of college football, the 2021 Georgia Bulldogs.
I mean, that's a pretty, convincing case you lay out.
Sure.
I'm sure somebody might say, like maybe like Miami in the early 2000s or something like that, or if you want to go back to like the 50s and 60s with Nebraska or Oklahoma, but completely different eras. But yeah, it's really impressive what Georgia has done. And, my kind of favorite way of thinking about Georgia right now is that they're kind of sort of playing a different game from everybody else, even though they're playing the same game.
Yeah, and Drew somehow thinks they might lose a game. That's crazy.
College football, you never know.
All right. Well, that'll do it for Salute Your Sports. I got to rest up, getting over a cold, make sure my voice is good for work. Drew Brackett's got to go to bed. Tom Castleman's got to say hi to the wife. We'll call it a night, guys. Hopefully, everyone will be back next week. I'm sure Tom and I will be. Hopefully, Drew Brackett is not too busy to join us next week. But if he is, we understand. Have a great night, everyone. And we'll be back next week.